I am Theron, Ramacharaka. Self-mastery and sex. Something just doesn't seem to sound right when those two things are said in the same breath. But then again, they do seem to kind of go together. Self-mastery and sex. See, on one hand, it seems like, he's going to talk about, getting control over the sex drive, the sex urge, the sex habit, in the direction of self-mastery, and maybe I don't really want to hear about that. That's one way to think that maybe the two shouldn't be stated in the same breath. Then again, that's exactly why, on the other hand, maybe they do seem to go together in the same breath. Self-mastery and sex. Sex isn't very often talked about when it comes to self-mastery. Well, far be it from me to leave something out. Because self-mastery does have to do with every part of life. And it is true that self-mastery does involve attention, control. And attention control does involve will. And it is true also that a good way to develop the use of will to control attention is to use it to control attention in a direction in which there is not a lot of interest. There are various aspects to this little thing I just named here that I just pointed out. This little collection of concepts and mental acts that I'm not going into here. But really, if you want to develop control over your mental sphere, over your mental planes of activity, you can direct your attention away from sex. And it'll work some wonders for you in the direction of self-mastery. Self-mastery with the small s, just with respect to gaining some mental discipline. Because, of course, we don't want to take our minds off sex, really, do we? I mean, not really. We need to take our minds off sex whenever we need to use our mind for something else. Therefore, some self-control in this area is, of course, exercised. But to take it further than that, in other words, it seems a little bit inhuman, doesn't it? On an ordinary definition of human, to actually pursue getting our mind off sex, period. As it creeps up in the background of our thoughts throughout the day. As it creeps up in our life throughout. That seems to be going a bit far then, doesn't it? But to somebody who really has self-mastery in mind, to somebody who actually wants to evolve, it's not out of line. In fact, it can be a pretty good method to employ. Because it's something that we have interest in, keeping our minds on, and pursuing in life. But isn't it a little bit dangerous, you might ask? to kind of get in the way of the sexual urge? Won't that lead to deviation, deviance, deviant behavior, extreme sexual thoughts? Won't it just become stronger and build up and burst out in some kind of really bad act? Well, it has done that for some people. I think that it has done that most often in cases where a person has been denied sex when they actually wanted it. In a prolonged situation in life, or as a trend in life. I'm not talking about specific instances, although it has happened in instances too. I'm not referring to anything like that. But if a person truly directs his attention elsewhere, his or her attention elsewhere, whenever sexual thoughts come up, just directs attention elsewhere. Like, for example, on what they are actually doing. Stops getting so distracted by it. And systematically develops this placing attention elsewhere. Are they then going to turn into a sexual deviant, into a rapist, into somebody whose thoughts become more and more bizarre? Or is the habit of sexual thinking going to be supplanted, replaced by thinking of other things? Which is the logical outcome here? Which is the truth? You tell me. Okay, I'll tell you. Your mind will get further and further away from obsession with sex. That's what'll happen. You can achieve a level of comfort in this, as a matter of fact. Because being obsessed by sex, even just in the background of your mind, rolling around, is a constant, kind of on and off, but overall constant thing in the background of your everyday life, can be frustrating. It can be annoying. And that annoyance can be taken as just a normal thing. A thing that has to be carried out in action at regular intervals. But if that background of sexual mental activity is slowly supplanted, slowly replaced, then the need for carrying it out kind of loses its place. And a greater level of mental discipline is achieved in most other affairs if the same practice is applied, because sex is a difficult one to apply it to. Applying it to sex is one in which we really, most people don't have a great interest in doing. Therefore, going ahead and doing so has a pretty powerful effect. It teaches us quite a bit about mental discipline. And again, I'm not referring to the normal restraint that we place upon our minds to keep from just reaching out and grabbing people sexually all day long, because that instinct is kind of there to some extent for most people, to just do whatever we feel like sexually with other people. It's at an instinctual level. It's down in there somewhere from long ago in the history of the race. But we have gained control over that. I'm talking about further control than that. What's further? Further than what most people employ today. It's a good self-mastery tool, and it's a good self-mastery end. Does this mean that you kill out your sexual urge? No, it doesn't really do that. It doesn't really do that. A person would be surprised to find that even upon achieving a high level of accomplishment in the direction that I'm talking about, whenever it does come time for sex, it's still there. And it's there by choice. The act is engaged in by choice, not because of some feeling of a need. Does this lead to despair, depression, and anxiety? No. Not when a person gains mastery over this urge, which really is there only for preservation of the species. Are you out to preserve the species, to procreate every time a sexual thought comes into your mind? Is that what you're really, if you were to carry through every time, would it be for the purpose of procreation? No. Rarely is it for that purpose that you would be carrying through with anything. Therefore, I don't want to hear the argument that, oh, it's all just natural. You know, the natural thing to do is to procreate when it comes to sex. If you're not up to doing that, then some mastery over this thought is due if we as a race are to evolve. But as long as we are a slave to such thinking, to such an instinctual level of mind, then we are slaves. We are not masters of mind. We are slaves to the lowest levels of mind, let alone any higher level. Oh, we can become so-called masterful, attain mastership over so many levels of mind, and we ignore the whole sexual thing when it comes to such practice. We just let it go on as it will, because we don't want to deal with that. Because it's just so much fun. And yet, well, when it comes to the fun part, think about how much frustration we put ourselves through over it. Honestly here. How much money we put into it, especially if we are men. How much we sacrifice in that direction if we are women. How much time goes into it. How much of a habit it can become. In the name of fun. People play sexual and master sexual slave games with each other. But I'm willing to bet that in most cases, both the master and the slave in that sexual relationship are slaves to their sexual urges. There's no real mastery in that at all. Any way you look at it, no matter how you dice it up. I'm just being straightforward about this. Did I think this through at all? Yeah. I mean, did I just sit down here and blurt stuff out off the top of my head without having ever given it any thought? No. Do I think that probably you know deep down inside everything I'm talking about? Yeah. I think that probably most of you do. Even if you don't like it. That's all I have to say for now. Something to think about with respect to, concerning some self-mastery. Oh yeah, there is one more thing. The kind of direction that I'm advocating here will be very effectively augmented if you include into your idea of self-mastery here the true self, the true I, the true ego, the I, the only real thing about you as being the center of control in your entire existence. That would help in a pretty big way. To learn more about that, you could take a look, for example, at my video series here on my channel, my playlist called A Series of Lessons in Raja Yoga. It doesn't talk about sex, but it does talk about this component that I say will be very helpful along these lines. I'm Theron Ramacharaka. Have a good day.